Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Listen with Vobes. Nearly said Board Explorer then. Listen with Vobes live show. Get my worms out. It's the 21st of December 2020. It's the winter solstice, apparently. Apparently that happened at something like 10 o'clock this morning. Whatever the solstice thing is and does. But happy solstice to those people who are celebrating it. I've got my gin ready. Sorry, my PLJ. Hello and welcome. We are reading on English Southern Roads, and we are pretty damn close to the end, which will be interesting to see if we get there. So let's say a quick hello to a few people out there on this very miserable day here in Worthing. And I'm looking at your comments so far. It looks like it's pretty damn miserable everywhere else. Hello to the lovely Julia, to Tall Podge, to Billabong O'Neill, to Turbo Stream, who says it's miserable winter solstice in Birmingham, to Billabong, who says we're going to have another go at photographing the conjunction. As long as that's not conjunctivitis, you'll be all right. And hello to Justine Jones, to Stephen Agger, who's lovely and warm with his new boiler. That's good to know. John F., hello to you. The Green Man on the foggy North Downs. Sean James Cameron is there with hasn't opened the biscuit tin, which is a shame. Andrew Norris, what ho, he says. Good to see the usual crowd have signed in. Absolutely. Philip Hammond and Mary, good afternoon to you. Lee Lawson, hello. I've got your emails, but I haven't responded. Apologies for that. Ben Reeve, rather nice Marks and Spencer's Yum Nut sat next to me with a cuppa. I'm not quite sure what a Yum Nut is, but it sounds nice. And we're all tucked up indoors watching Richard, says the lovely Julia. Thank you, lovely Julia. And Nigel Sadler says, hello, grey, dark, but dry in Kent. And I saw the lovely Linda Kane briefly this morning, who I'm surprised is not tuning in, but she may be just getting on board. She just dropped outside and waved, which was nice. More about that in the Vogue show. And yeah, we left our motley crew halfway through a chapter again, I'm afraid to say. So we're going to pick them up from where we are, wherever they are. I've forgotten now because the weekend has been and gone, and it's been one of those days. I've been desperate to get out and do another border walk, but I can't get out because the weather is so awful and I don't want to film in the rain. I've only just sent the email, so I'm not surprised you haven't answered, says Lee. I saw them come in and I haven't read them. I saw the titles of them. But I've been getting tomorrow's video all sorted and a number of other bits and pieces. We, where the hell were we? We were somewhere up Avon, I think, at a place called the Antelope, weren't we? That's what it says here. Hopefully, if I just read where we left off, we'll get some idea of what's been going on in this book. It's fairly predictable now. So we see how we go. I think they obviously set off. Were they setting off towards Andover or somewhere, or they've done Frome, haven't they? He didn't do much at Frome, if I remember rightly. Didn't he mention that there's a stream that goes down the centre of Frome High Street? Lovely little, like a leat that you would get in South Devon. They have leats, don't they, on the what do you call that? Dartmoor place. They have leats, or rifes, they call them in other places. Anyway, this was not altogether acceptable news. I'm not quite sure what was not the news. So we inquired of the road and learned to head 5 miles or further east Everley. There was an inn. Oh, yes, that's right. Would they get to the inn? That's right. That's where we were. Would they get to the inn? There was an inn where we might perhaps be accommodated, but there was no other inn on the road. So this ostler, I think it was, believed, between Everley and Andover, and a good 17 hilly miles away. That's right. This was not altogether acceptable news. What if the hotel at East Everley were full? That was the rub. What a pleasant predicament we should be in, belated with tired horses in the middle of inhospitable Salisbury Plain. If we couldn't get in, perhaps we could get quarters for the horses, my wife argued, and we might at a pinch tramp on for the extra 12 miles to Andover. The prospect did not commend itself to me. I threw out a gentle hint that this was a pleasure trip, and that two tired souls to tramp 20 weary miles over the lonely roads in the night time, even granting that we did not miss our way in the dark, was not exactly my idea of pleasure. Then we both simultaneously remarked what fools we were to have passed by such an apparently comfortable hotel as the one at Rushall, but this didn't help us much. There was nothing for it but to push on with what speed we might. The evening was coming on apace. The round red sun was slowly sinking behind the long line of downs in the west. Soon the gloaming would follow, and then the darkness. Under the circumstances, we ordered the horses to be put to at once and drove on. A suggestion that it would perhaps be the wisest and safest course was to hark back to the despised hotel at Rushall, which was scouted as promptly as it was made. Scouted? That's an interesting way. Rejected, I presume he means. We never turned back yet on the road, and we never would. Besides, why should the inn at Everley be full? We knew no reason why it should. The unsatisfactory point was that the landlord at Upper on Avon did not seem to know much about the inn at Everley. It might, for all the definite information that we could gather from him, be a poor public house. He was evidently anxious with his wife ill for us to proceed. Was he making the best of things to induce us to depart? Already the sun had dipped behind the western hills before we left Up Avon, and so we made what haste we could on the deserted road that stretched straight before us, a long white line lengthening out towards the dim, mysterious distance. There was gloom and greyness coming over the landscape, and the contours of the downs were becoming indistinct. Then our road began to mount for a while or more in good earnest, till it brought us on high ground, on to the top of the world, as it were, at least to what world there was just then. From this point we looked down upon a wilderness of low, barren hills. Stopping here for a few minutes, he says, looking up, having lost his page, just to give us the horses their breath after the long pull-up, we were struck by the sense of solitude and silence, the consciousness of vast space, and the utter loneliness of the spot. There was a feeling of intense desolateness all over, for no sign of man or his handiwork was there, except the hardly discernible rough road that we were on. A cool, brisk breeze had risen as the sun had set, and the clouds above were drifting rapidly, being wind-driven into weird, fantastic forms. It seemed just then as though we had somehow reached a solitude profound, hill-grit by nature from the outer world. Hello to Linda Kane, who is there, who's just arrived. Hello to you. And, of course, hello to everybody else who's not actually engaged in the chat, of course. Don't forget to give us a big thumbs up if you're enjoying the reading. Land and sky were both impressive. Around us all looked so sullen, eerie and forsaken, if not inhuman, that we felt almost as though we might be wanderers in another planet, suddenly transplanted there by some unknown magic, or that we were gazing upon a portion of a primeval world, and were the first travellers that ever burst into that silent land. So much for the sentiment. However, we had no time to spare for fanciful romancing. The darkness was creeping on apace. The stars were beginning to glimmer in the moonless sky, and the golden light in the west was gone. The practical fact remained that we were benighted on Salisbury Plain. The one thing to be done was to drive on as speedily as circumstances would allow. The air now became so keen and cold that we were glad of our rugs and overcoats, and worst of all, our horses began to show signs of fatigue, owing possibly more to the ruggedness of the road than to the distance travelled. For the first time during our journey, we had to urge them on, though this was done rather by encouragement of the voice than by the whip. Presently, a short, steep drop downhill led us to a spot humanised by a few scattered cottages, and made less melancholy by a pond that gave a dreary gleam of leaden light to the general gloom. Then a rise followed, and we found ourselves at last in East Everley, an oasis of green trees in a desert of barren downs. But the trees increased the darkness and the difficulty of driving. At the end of the woods, we dimly discerned a building that we took to be the inn. At that moment, we had a suspicion of someone passing by, and we shouted to know if our conjectures were right, and the welcome answer came out of the darkness that it was the Crown. Strangely enough, not even a solitary gleam of light showed forth from the front door or window, and we half feared that the house might be empty. However, with the aid of our lamps, we found our way to the entrance, only to discover the door locked, so we rang the bell, and after a time the landlady appeared with a candle in her hand, which the wind blew out almost immediately. "Can you put us up for the night?" we asked, anxiously. She looked first at us, next at the bright lights of the lamps of the dog-cart, which cast a cheery gleam around, then waited as though considering what to say. Perhaps she was astonished at finding travellers arriving thus late in such an out-of-the-world spot. However, at last she spoke. "I can give you a bed and stable your horses, but I'm afraid I cannot get you dinner tonight." "Not give us any dinner? Why, I should not have expected such a thing at such an hour in the first-rate London hotel. Ye gods! Fancy belated travellers in the middle of Salisbury's Plain expecting dinner at the roadside hostelry at that time of night. Did she take us for royalty, touring in disguise? We were only too rejoiced to obtain shelter for ourselves and our horses." There were no guests staying in the house, which fact accounted for there being no lights visible. Soon, however, lamps were lighted in the little hall, and in the snug sitting-room into which we were ushered for the time, and what a delightful surprise ours was, I've read that bit wrong there. Soon, however, lamps were lighted in the little hall, and in the snug sitting-room into which we were ushered for the time, and what a delightful surprise was ours, I almost think one of the most delightful surprises we ever experienced on the road, for we found the little sitting-room to be most charming and cosy chamber, panelled from roof to ceiling, neatly and appropriately furnished, in truth more like the snuggery of some artistic soul or literary genius particular of his surroundings. There was a refinement about the chamber, an artistic fitness that seemed strangely out of keeping with the wild country around. But our surprise did not end there. When we were shown into our bedroom, we found it also to be panelled in a similar manner, only the panelling there was painted a creamy white that gave a fresh, clean and bright appearance to the apartment. Moreover, it had actually had a dressing-room attached. What unlooked-for luxury! We felt almost that we must be dreaming, and that things were not as they seemed. But no, it was a happy reality. Long will linger pleasantly in my memory the restful evening we spent in the cosy panelled parlour of that lonely inn, with the soft shaded light of a swinging lamp shed calmly down on the whitest of cloths, whereon was spread an excellent tea, with a vase, that's very American, isn't it? A vase of sweet-scented flowers set into the midst to adorn the table. The coming upon this charming inn and its kind-hearted landlady was one of the pleasurable experiences that are the special delights of the road traveller, and it was here that we expected the least, being quite prepared to rough it if we could only obtain shelter of any kind. So happily ended our long and mildly eventful day's wanderings. Ah, how very nice, and I'm very pleased for them. However, we are now on chapter 19, ladies and gentlemen. Chapter 19. 19. Lee Lawson says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Kay Dean says, Hi, Richard. Can't stay and listen right now. Want to send you warm wishes from a very Merry Christmas and a lovely, healthy, safe and Happy New Year from Ontario in Canada. Ah, that's very kind of you. Thank you. And the same and likewise to you too, sir. Very kind of you to pop in. That's very good. Linda Kane has... I'm easily confused, but Eversley is in Hampshire, not on Salisbury Plain. Eve's... Yes, well, I don't understand this. This is not... This is Everley. What have you got? The Eversley. This is Everley. Everley. According to the thing. According to the book. Linda Kane says Everley, spelt differently, Everley, has a crown in 17th century. So... think there is a Slumberwell type confusion. Ah. Anyway, this is chapter 19. We were so pleased with our quarters at Everley that we determined to stay over the next day there, and at the same time giving our hard-worked horses a well-merited rest. Perhaps to some people the scenery in the vicinity of our hotel might not appear very attractive, but for us it had its own special charms. Round about the land was open down, and we could wander unimpeded where we would. There is something very delightful in the sensation of freedom, of being able to rove unrestrained for miles in almost any direction. The soft springy turf, too, made the mere fact of walking a pleasure, and the light tonic air caused us to feel like the British soldier, fit to go anywhere and to do anything, fit to tramp about the whole day long. Interesting that they talk about the soft, springy, what did he say, the springy turf. And shame to think that most of that is now gone and is this awful farmland of monoculture and Italian ryegrass that's everywhere. The best of the country, the nature has just been stripped out of the land. The buoyant atmosphere was simply life-giving. What a place to brace one up is Everley. And what a lordly playground Salisbury Plain makes, especially those boys in khaki running around shooting each other with tanks. Oh, sorry, too early. The air coming unrestrained from the vast uplands, uncontaminated by the smoke of the large town and distilled in its way over the dry and thymy downs, possesses a rare and peculiar virtue of briskness and softness. It combines, in a measure, the bracing qualities of Scotland and the balminess of South Devon. What a place for the nerves. Is it buffering? Are we buffering? I know my son is on YouTube downloading at the moment, so I hope it's not buffering. I suppose if road signs were thin on the ground, the author may not have seen the name of the village written down. And just looking at the feedback, is it buffering? Let me know. because it's terrible if it's buffering. I can turn the bit rate down if necessary. The country road. No buffering here, says David. Oh, that's good. The country round about Everley may well indeed be described by the term rolling. In parts, indeed, it almost deserves the epithet hilly. In this portion of the plain, too, in sheltered hollows, scraggy woods are to be found, and some of the rounded heights are now and again crowned. Wait a minute. In this portion of the plain, too, in sheltered hollows, scraggy woods are to be found, and some of the rounded heights are now and again crowned by clumps of wind-blown trees that give them quite a character and are a special feature in the landscape, and whilst not taking away from the country its wild look, they prevent it from being called desolate or barren. Early next morning, whilst looking after the welfare of our horses, we discovered the landlord in the stables. So far we'd only come in contact with the landlady, and the existence of a landlord came, I hardly know why, as a surprise to us. We learnt from him that the inn had originally been a dower house, a fact which at once explained the panelled interior of the rooms and the well-designed, picturesque interior, an interior that had been as little spoilt as possible in the transition from a private and refined home into a country hostelry. Since we had started on our tour, we had experienced no rain, but that morning there was a goodly supply of suspicious-looking, leaden-tinted clouds lowering all round the circling horizon. And now and then we heard a distant rumble of thunder. "Gonna have a storm?" we queried of the landlord. "I hope so," said he. "At least I hopes we get some rain. We're short of water up here. That's the drawback of the place. We can do with a lot more rain than we gets as a rule. It may turn wet, but I don't think we'll get a thunderstorm. We rarely do. Thunder always follows the water, and we've none up here in the hills. At Upton and down the Avon, they get thunderstorms often, whilst the sun is shining here." We had never heard this theory before of thunderstorms following the water, but there may be something in it, for certainly the electric fluid, when it strikes the earth or a building, invariably seeks damp ground. There's a picture here, Salisbury Plain near Everley. Here we go. Would you like to see the picture? Of course you would. Why else have you tuned in? And that is the barrenness of the land, the bleakness of the plain. Don't go out on the moors today, Mr. Stapleton. There is a hound out there, the like of which you've never seen. The jaws are big, the claws are grim, and something. Oh, don't worry, I'll be all right. I'll take this dog with me, a blind man with a wooden leg. Only sold it to me this morning. We spent a delightful and most enjoyable day wandering, fancy-led, over the wind-swept uplands, rejoicing for once to be alone with earth and sky, and desiring no other company. Enough entertainment for us to watch the constable-esque clouds go drifting by overhead, and to watch the stately sweep of the mighty shadows they cast, raking the curved hills in quick succession. Need to just scratch my nose. There was an indescribable grandeur in the vast swell of the downs that led the eye away and away, till it vanished into a dreamy nothingness of distant blue. How space-expressing was the prospect, conveying a feeling of majesty without ruggedness or severity, the impressiveness of the scenery being mainly due to its revelation of mighty distances. The roads that cross the plain here are unenclosed, and in some cases gradually merge into mere grassy tracks, which in turn lose themselves altogether and land the too trusting traveller nowhere. We wandered westward into a spacious solitude of breezy uplands, encircled by an undulating horizon of indigo-blue hills. Grey masses of grey, even great masses of grey, rounded, drooping clouds charged with aqueous vapours, sailed slowly by, overhead, across the sea of deepest blue. But strangely, no rain fell. Now and again the clouds just touched the summits of the hills, and for a time half hid their forms. Then they appeared to swoop still lower down, and it seemed as though we could almost lift up our hands and touch them, so close did they descend. We expected every moment to get a drenching, yet nothing came of it at all, but the stormy-looking effects as they went sweeping across the plain, which were most striking. We made rapid sketches of the varying sky scenery as well as the ever-changing colours of the downs. Now a near hill would be a dark purple-blue in shade, anon it would be a brilliant green as the sunlight burst upon it, turning the gloom into a transient golden glory. A solitary weather-beaten shepherd driving a few sheep along a lonely, rutted road was all the life we saw that morning. Not even a stray bird enlivened the silence and desolate prospect of the land and sky. The only sound we heard was the subdued, hardly audible murmuring of the hurrying wind as it swept over the short grass and startled the stunted gorse. It was a profound solitude, yet, if there can be such a thing, a companionable solitude, a wild nature, but neither austere nor forbidding. There were no frowning precipices, no noisy rushing torrents, no aspiring mountain peaks to limit the long range of vision, for we could look over most, if not all, of the downs and rake their valleys below. Our eyes could rove without hindrance over miles and miles of curving greenery that gradually faded away into grey, and then, still farther on, into a mystery of blue where the earth seemed to melt into the sky. It was a grand study of vanishing perspective, the distant downs being dwarfed by space into mere faint lines, and the blueness of the horizon revealing the mighty extent of air, a something almost tangible up there that we saw through. So, we spent a long, pleasant and profitable day wandering at will over the smooth-turfed downs, now and again resting to make a sketch by way of a change, or simply sitting on a grassy mound, lazily admiring the spreading panorama, or reclining at full length thereon, looking up at the great clouds above and studying their ever-changeful forms. For the fine skyscape interested us almost as much as the landscape. We delighted in laziness. It is a splendid tonic for the tired brain, only it is well to be lazy in a bracing atmosphere. The buoyant air will not allow you to remain idle longer than a minute, and will not allow you to remain idle longer than nature needs to recoup herself. When next morning came, we felt loath to leave our comfortable, not to say luxurious quarters. But still many miles of pleasant country lay before us, and home. It was necessary to proceed, or we should be on the road the whole summer, and circumstances did not permit. Even the longest holiday comes to an end in time, so with this philosophical reasoning we set forth once more on our wanderings, our horses being delightfully fresh after their day's rest. It was an inspiring morning, for the rain clouds had all cleared off, and the sky was a glorious bright blue, dappled with a few wind-woven clouds that foretold fine, if not breezy, weather. The sun shone joyously forth as a matter of worthy. The sun shone joyously forth in a manner worthy of Italy, and we felt, as we drove on in that happy state of optimism that made pessimism seemed unreality, that the world appeared to us a very excellent one that day. I'm sure it did. Don't go a-wandering over the plain today. You'll get shot, I tell thee, says Turbo Stream. That's true. It's interesting to have a description of what Salisbury Plain was like prior to the army coming in, because it's that area that you can't really just go wandering anymore, which is a shame, isn't it? Oh, excuse me, I'm quite tired today. Ooh. Must be the weather. Our road at first led us over the wide open downs that rose and fell around us, ridge succeeding ridge in endless succession. In some parts the grass looked so temptingly smooth that we drove along it, gladly deserting the rough and stony highway for the elastic turf that made driving of itself a delight. So easy and noiseless was our progress. It seemed unnatural almost to trot along without hearing the sound of the horses' hooves on the ground, or the crunching of the carriage wheels on the hard, gritty road. Just as at sea, aboard a mail steamer, voyagers get so accustomed to the measured throbbing of the engines that they can sleep right through it, but should, for any reason, the engines be stopped, the unusual silence causes them to be awake. So easy was the driving that we were as comfortable as though seated in an armchair. Indeed, we might figuratively say that our tour was taken in an armchair on wheels. At one point we reached some way ahead, where another lonely road met ours at right angles, and we noticed an old, decrepit, leaning signpost, and beside this was a man on horseback, standing quite still. For what purpose I cannot say, but there he stood, he and his horse being the only living things visible in all the wild and far-reaching prospect. In the olden days this figure would certainly have suggested a highwayman, and might have caused considerable misgivings on our part. As it was, we merely wondered why he was standing there. We passed him standing on the spot, and the last view of him on our looking back from some way off showed that him still standing there. We bade him good day as we drove by, and he returned the greeting. It was no business of ours what he was doing, strangely, loitering thus. But I must confess that in the days when they flourished the gentleman of the road, this would have been a decided drawback to driving tours. True, they might have added a spice of danger to such an expedition, with the possibility of a more or less exciting adventure, but I for one am well satisfied to read of these things in books, perfectly content with a peaceful progress. I have experienced some adventures while travelling on the horseback over blazed mountain forest tracks and stopping at lonely ranches in the wild west of America, but I consider such adventures far more delightful to relate in after-dinner talk across the walnuts and the wine than to experience in actuality. Better than most of the adventures in this world is the recollection thereof. I suppose that's true. As we drove on, the country gradually assumed a less wild aspect. Enclosed lands and cultivated fields became visible and increased, till in time tangled hedgerows bordered our road, which had previously been quite fenceless. By degrees the bold down scenery gave place to the softer features of the pastoral and wooded land. Then, in a short space, we reached the picturesque and interesting village of Ludgershall, once an important town with a strong castle. Only the latter only a fragment remains. This we discovered in an old farmyard, still crumbling away, a portion of it doing duty as a shed. The original keep is constructed chiefly of flints. Originally, judging by the site, judging by the slight proportion. Originally, judging by the slight portions existing, this was facing the square-hewn stones. We noticed some herringbone work in the tower, an effective, strong and enduring way of building with small slabs or tiles, and why it should have gone completely out of fashion I cannot comprehend, as it lends a very pleasing variety to a wall or building, allows the employment of inexpensive material, and has stood the rough test of centuries apparently unhurt. It is a perfectly legitimate way of giving an agreeable diversity to a wall surface. What could be more picturesquely effective in a chalk country than a cottage or a house built of blue grey flints, the natural building stone of the district, varied by bands of red tiles built in herringbone fashion, form and colour contrasting, the cool blue-grey of the rounded flints being in juxtaposition with the warm tints of the angular tiles, be they oblong or square. The great fault of the architects of today is that they pay scant heed to local material, trusting overmuch to the everlasting red brick because it saves so much trouble. All local flavour and colouring is thus lost, and architecturally speaking, the land, in consequence, suffers from a plague of scarlet fever. It is red brick here and red brick there, and red brick almost everywhere. But I'm wandering from the castle. The views from the ramparts round the keep, especially looking northwards and westwards towards Salisbury Plain, are very fine. Some of the old houses in the village look rather interesting, and a large pond in the centre gives it a cheerful look, reflecting as it does the bright blueness of the sky into the midst of time-dimmed surroundings. Near to the pond stands the broken base of what must have been an important market cross. Around this base are some very weather-worn figures, too much effaced to make anything of them, at least without any more time to study them than we could devote. The old broken and decayed cross gives quite a character and interest to the village street. It tells of former days and former ways, and points to a past prosperity. I fear that Ludgershall, I don't know how it's pronounced, is still decreasing in size, for as we pass through we notice several cottages being pulled down. Oh. Linda Kane says, my friend lived in Collingbourne, Duchess, near Everley, and Ludgershall, beautiful area. I don't know how you pronounce it. Do you pronounce the D? Is it Ludgershall or is it Lugger? Onward from here the landscape was open and pleasant, and frequent peeps into the distant wooded hills. Wild commons, too, gave a sense of space to the countryside, and with nothing further notable, we arrived at Way Hill, a village consisting chiefly, judging from our passing glances, of a series of beautiful stone booths, plastered over with notices of refreshments. Way Hill is famous for having the largest yearly fair in England, and seems to exist and prosper in a fashion on this one fair, lasting a week, where large numbers of cattle change hands, a vast amount of agricultural produce is sold, and farm hands still congregate for their annual hiring. I've got to work out where the hell he is, because I don't really know where these places are. So Ludgershall, Ludgershall Market Cross still there. How are you pronouncing it? Ludgershall, is it? No D. Right, Ludgershall. Although it's spelt with a D, isn't it? Ludgershall. Let me just have a look on the map. I need to see where we're just take a little bit of time out here whilst we do this. Ludgershall. Salisbury, Wiltshire. Okay. Is that the castle? So first of all, he's gone here, hasn't he? He's gone up here somewhere, around here. And then, I can't remember what way he went. Did he go through Hazelmere? I don't know whether he did all this. But anyway, he went somehow to his Froome. Oh, so he's on his way back. So he's coming up around here, presumably coming back this way. There's Devizes. He went up to Devizes, didn't he? And then he must have gone through this other little village that we don't know. Everley, which we can't find. Nobody can find Everley. Interesting. Must have been there. I can't. Oh, there it is. Everley, there. There it is. And down to Ludgershall. And where do you suppose the market is? Sans Chinese. Is it down there? Post office, Queen's Head. Must be. Oh, there's the high street. Let's have a look. Where's our little fella? Go down there, little fella. There's the high street. Oh, not as old as I was expecting. Oh, is that the market? Wait a minute. Why do you keep going backwards? Is this the market cross, or is that a war memorial? Oh. Is that war memorial the market? I mean, this must be the market area, surely. The Great War. Where else would it be? Look at the map in the book, Richard, says Linda Kane. Oh, hang on. Look at the map in the book. Look at the map in the book. He looked at the map and it took one took, and that's all it was in the book. Book. Look at that. Is there a map in the book? I haven't got a map in mine. I haven't got a nice book like yours. It's a lovely book, because I remember Justine Jones sent it to me. Is there a map? Is there a map in the back? Works by the same author. Oh, here we go. Plan of the Route, 1896. Don't let me lose my page. Oh, no. Oh, yes. Here we go. For those in black and white, here it is. Sorry, hang on. I will get it steady. So we are there. Oh, I see. So he's come round like this, gone up round there. And then it ends back, presumably back down in somewhere around there. Lovely. That was good advice. Anyway, so there we are. Oh, he's going to he's in Way Hill, that's right. And then Andover Fist, down to Winchester, Abbotsworthy, Aylesford, or Aylesford, how you pronounce it, Petersfield, Midhurst, Petworth, Pulborough. Oh, interesting. It's going to some places that I know. Don't know whether you lot know, but it's going to get through those in thumping quick time, I should imagine. Anyway. So, hang on, feeling a bit tired today. Oh, I went to the wrong village, didn't I? Way Hill is the village with the market cross, isn't it? I think I'd gone to the wrong village. Oh no, Ludgershall Market Cross still there. I couldn't find it unless that was what I was looking at, but that didn't look like the Market Cross. But anyway, never mind all that. We've gone now. Anyway, after this give and take road brought us to. Oh, sorry. After this, a give and take road brought us to Andover, a clean, neat, quiet little market town, boasting of no special picturesqueness or interesting features. At least, if it possessed any, we failed to discover them, and with absolutely nothing to attract or detain the average tourist. But its failure to excite us in any way was not without its recompense, for after a tour of inspection around the town, on returning to our comfortable inn, we felt no compulsion or desire to desert the ample projecting bay window of the coffee room, whence we commanded the marketplace and viewed the amusing life thereof. It chanced to be market day. The streets were thronged with farmers and their wives, looking jolly and prosperous enough in spite of the proverbial bad times, besides numerous uncatalogued rural folk who moved in and out amongst the crowd. These market days bring far apart country dwellers together once a week, and afford an opportunity for a mutual exchange of views and scandal. It really seemed to us, from what we could gather, that the farmer and his wife come to market nowadays more as an excuse for a mild change and to do a little shopping and a good deal of gossip than for actual business. The whole moving scene of the many characters, therefore, that played their parts so unconsciously were interesting as any play, more so than many. There were 2 easy chairs in that great bay window, and in them we saw the whole afternoon and were well entertained. So amused were we that we stayed instead of proceeding on our way to Winchester as we'd planned, and when the play was over we found it rather late to take the long stage of 16 miles to that city, so we remained the night at Andover, and as the chance company at our inn that evening proved very entertaining, we did not regret to change our programme. I didn't read that terribly well, but never mind. There is an old rhyming proverb relating to 4 Hampshire towns, of which Andover is one, and it runs thus: Romsey in the mud, Southampton on the stones, Winchester eats the meat, Andover picks the bones. This rhyme hardly needs any elucidation. It does to me. But perhaps it is only fair to remark that though the streets of Romsey used to have an unenviable notoriety for their mud, it is very clean and bright little town today. In the times gone by, when Romsey deserved its muddy reputation, it used to be a Hampshire saying in speaking of anyone who was slovenly or unclean in person that he or she came from Romsey. Let us trust the reverse holds good now. Yes, let us hope that is true. We had a long pull uphill on leaving Andover, as far as a chalk cutting. We had a long pull uphill on leaving Andover, as far as a chalk cutting, evidently made to ease the road at the summit of the rise. Looking back from the elevated position, we had a glorious view right over Andover and over a stretch of wooded country beyond to the undulating uplands of Salisbury Plain that bounded the prospect. We tried to trace our road of yesterday, but failed. The country now assumed a wild and forest-like aspect, and we observed that the district was marked as Harewood Forest on our map. Then a long run downhill with vistas ahead between the trees of a high horizon of deep blue brought us to Long Parish. At least a village of that name was marked there on our map, but as a matter of fact we only saw a public house and 1 or 2 stray cottages. Perhaps, in keeping with its name, the hamlet is a long one and not all visible at a glance. We crossed the Troutful Test, a wide silvery stream that flows between reedy banks and past luxuriant pastures. The greenfulness all along the riverside was very refreshing to look upon, doubly so in contrast with the dry and parched landscape all about, for the country for miles around was suffering from a prolonged drought, and the murmuring music of the tumbling weir made liquid melody was a delight to listen to. Give me nature's music, the soft wind rustling the standing corn, or the sirring through the forest trees, the gurgling and the plashing of some mountain stream, the peaceful babbling of a brook, the tuneful song of free birds, the solacing sound of the distant sea when the summer waves break upon the shore. Of such music one never wearies. Of other kinds I often do, especially that of a German band. We pulled up here and wandered down the river and envied a fisherman who, rod in hand, was leisurely strolling along the opposite bank. He looked the very picture of contentment and was manifestly enjoying the scenery as well as the sport. We were glad to see him, for he made a pleasing figure in our sketch. Unconsciously, he stood a while in a picturesque ding attitude, just where an artist would have placed him for effect. Then he began to whip the stream, and we returned to the dog-cart. Ding! I think the phone is now dinging for all the picturesques itself. It is well to be an angler, and to spend the long summer day amongst a cool and restful scenery, and to take one's ease at night in some quiet country inn, where followers of the gentle craft are thoughtfully catered for. Small wonder that the average angler, the old-fashioned angler, is a contemplative being, well-mannered and a genial companion, for his hobby takes him into scenes that are eminently spirit-soothing. To a certain extent, I believe that scenery has an effect upon character. I've always found that men and their families who live in secluded mountain valleys or apart from the world on lonely, desolate moors are taciturn, austere, not to say morose, whilst dwellers in the fruitful valleys are of a brighter and happier nature. There is something very fascinating as well as soothing in watching the quiet flow of a river gleaming, glancing and gurgling round its graceful curves. It is delightful, whether you angle or not, to roam by a riverside, exploring countless backwaters and coming upon unfrequented nooks and corners where cattle descend to drink, and where perchance ancient tree-hidden mills hum drowsily through the business, drum drowsily as though business were a slothful affair, and all things seem to live a life of lazy contentment. Nothing appears to be in a hurry by the side of a slow-flowing rural river. And there we're going to leave it, because he's going to continue a little bit further and we won't make it to the end of the chapter, and it is 10 to the hour and it's a good place to stop. How close are we? We are edging closer. I think certainly by the end of the week we will be at the end of this, and Christmas is coming and the goose is eating the cheese. The phone is always listening, says TurboStream. 3 dings so far. Anyone here from Romsey going to take a fence? Yes, please take that fence down, otherwise we can't get through. My son Stanley has just told me that my grandson George loves the little cars I bought him for Christmas. He came over at the weekend, and he had these Hot Wheels. I've got a whole load of these Hot Wheels, and we were whizzing them forward and back over in the hallway here and into the kitchen, and it was just, I mean, simple present really, one of a couple of other presents, but a simple present, but he loved it. So that's nice to know, and they're obviously whizzing the cars in the kitchen, I imagine, so that's lovely. Anyway, there we go. Another show, another dime. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, and send bucket loads of money to keep a poor bald-headed reading person in the quality lifestyle that he needs, or not, as the case may be. Phobe show tonight, and we will carry on with this tomorrow. No hint at the moment of another Sussex border walk at the moment. The weather has just been so bleak. Tomorrow looks dreadfully overcast and potential rain hazard, so probably won't be doing that. So I've got to keep rummaging around for novel ideas for films, but you never know, something might turn up. In the meantime, keep your pecker up. Don't worry too much about what the government's up to. Get on and enjoy your life as much as you can. And I will try and entertain you later tonight with the lovely Julia and throughout the rest of the week. Take care, one and all. Thank you very much. And I will catch up with you soon. Till then, thanks again for coming. Bye for now.